Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about why applying a deadline to your training goals is important and how having a goal without a deadline just turns into a wish. Now, if someone comes to me and they say, Chris, I want to bench 300. I want to get my bench up over 300, or I want to get a double body weight squat. I'll say, great. When? When do we want to have this happen by? And if they just say, well, sometime I'd like to have it happen, I know it's not happening. But if they say, I want to bench double my body weight, squat double my body weight, bench my body weight by the summer. Boom. Now we got it. Now we're talking. Now it can happen. So the difference between a dreamer and a doer is a calendar. You can dream about things all day, every day, but until you pick a date and draw a line on that calendar and pick that date, those are going to be just dreams floating around in your head without you taking action. Having a date set and putting a deadline to a goal anchors it to the ground and allows it to grow, take root and grow. And you start taking action and seeing progress towards that goal. Without it, you're just wishing and daydreaming. Goals without deadlines turn into wishes, and wishes don't increase your lifts. They don't add weight to your total, and they don't shed body fat. They don't improve your physique. We've all had those dreams, those goals, those ambitions that we say we're definitely going to do one day. And we let them drift by saying, one of these days I'll get to it. And before you know it, a year has gone by, 2 years has gone by, and that goal is still just hanging out there. So this is the danger of not having that deadline. Life gets busy and we let it slip by. We get distracted and suddenly you're looking back, wondering where all that time went. Deadlines don't make life easier, they make it clear. So when you know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done by, now you've created a pressure for yourself to work under. That's the power of deadlines. They create a healthy pressure. They wake you up earlier, they keep you up later, and they sharpen your focus. Now, here's another thing about deadlines. They don't have to be perfect. You may not hit your deadline exactly, and that's okay. That's not failure. That's refinement. So maybe you set a goal for your training and you miss it by a month, 3 months, 6 months. That's okay, because at least you're moving. You're progressing. That goal pulled you forward. But if you didn't mark it down, you don't even have the chance to adjust. You'll just drift. So you don't want to let life hand you a calendar. You want to put the dream down and you decide when the dream becomes a goal, when the goal becomes a plan, and when the plan becomes reality. That's the thing about deadlines. If you don't set them for yourself, life will set them for you. Rent comes due, no matter what, whether you're ready for it or not. Taxes come due, whether or not you've prepared them. The seasons roll on, whether or not you've prepared to weather those seasons. So it's not a question of whether or not deadlines exist. The question is, are you smart enough to use them in your favor? So when you set a date for a training goal, something happens, things shift. Suddenly every rep has a purpose. Every set has to pass a new test. Does this help me hit my deadline or not? And that's what having a deadline does. It forces decision. Without it, training sessions go by without you seeing any progress. With it, muscle starts to build. Strength starts to grow. Numbers start being added to your total. Deadlines aren't there to punish you. They are there to serve you. Without them, you drift. With them, you build. I have met a ton of guys with all kinds of natural ability, strength, ambition, talent, full of dreams and ideas about what they were going to do with all of it. But they never set a date. And guess what? 5 years later, they're still where they were. They're looking at somebody less talented than they are naturally, but with a calendar in hand, who has all of a sudden accomplished great things. They've doubled their squat. They've competed in 3 meets, and they've built themselves a solid physique. We talk a lot on this channel about discipline, and discipline follows a deadline. Without a deadline, discipline has no target. But once you set a date on something, discipline becomes your ally. When the clock is running and the days are counting, suddenly every hour in the gym becomes precious. And this is how ordinary guys will accomplish extraordinary things. Don't just dream, don't just hope, don't just talk. Take that dream, circle a date, and let the deadline shape your behavior. You will be amazed at how shit starts to go your way once you've put a deadline to something. Now, time can be deceptive. When you grow older, you realize this. Time is deceptive. 5 years seems like a long time when you're looking ahead at it, but when you're looking back at it, it went by in a flash. People will overestimate what they can do in a week, but underestimate what they can do in a year. A year of consistent action with deadlines set, you can accomplish so much. Famous last words are, "I'll get to it next year." And then before you know it, 5 next years have gone by and you're in the same spot without accomplishing anything, only 5 years older. Now, when you look at time, it's either your ally or your enemy. It depends how you use it. A deadline will give time shape. So without it, it's just like water running through your fingers. The deadline is the container that holds the water and gives it that shape. If you've ever gone on vacation, ever notice how you get more done the week leading up to vacation than you've ever gotten done before? I can tell you I recently moved to the Philippines, and it was a process of years, many months. And I can tell you, after I booked that plane ticket and the date was set, and I knew that flight was leaving, I got more done in the 6 weeks between the time that I booked the ticket and the time that my flight took off than I did in the previous 6 months. Because that flight was leaving. That deadline was set. Once you know you've got your deadline, that stuff has to get done. All the things that I had to take care of to leave Canada, move to the Philippines, not just myself, my son, all this stuff had to get done. That flight was leaving. I had no choice. The deadline was set. So all those things, it provides that urgency. And that's the thing. That's how deadlines work. They force focus. All that stuff I was doing before for the previous 6 months, year, knowing that I was someday moving to the Philippines, all that work could have gotten done at a more moderate pace. But once that date was set, it had to get done. Because without that deadline looming, that deadline, the urgency was missing. So a lot of us don't like pressure, but pressure isn't always a problem. Sometimes pressure can be a privilege. The pressure of a deadline means you're involved in something meaningful. So the biggest example is when you sign up for a meet. That pressure is there, but you're now training for something meaningful instead of just going through your regular training sessions every single day. Now you've got something on the calendar, so that pressure is there, but it feels kind of good because you know you're training for something. This means something. No deadline equals no demand. No demand equals no growth. Growth lives in the space between where you are currently and where you've decided to be by a certain date. And even if you fall a little short, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, because at least you've moved forward. You will have been 10 times farther ahead than you would have been had you not set that date. Missing a deadline isn't the end of the world. The real tragedy is not having set one in the first place. Now, one area where I can improve on this is in my reading practice. I have a shelf full of books that I want to read, but to this point, most of them are just sitting on a dusty shelf. And this is because I bought these books with the intention of reading them someday. So if I switched that to, I'm going to read one a month until I'm finished, suddenly I have a full library full of books that I've read and a head full of knowledge instead of a dusty shelf of unread books. So if I know that I need to read 20 pages a day to stay on track to read my one book a month and make that deadline that I've set for myself, then I'm going to have an entire library read one book at a time. Now, I want you to start small with these. If you start setting yourself deadlines, start small, because this will build your confidence. Start small with little deadlines that you can accomplish. So make your first one, I've got to get 3 workouts in this week. Deadline is end of the week, Saturday, Sunday. 3 workouts need to be done. Or it can be, I have to complete, along with my strength work, 3 workouts this week. At least 2 of them have to have a conditioning attached to it. Those small deadlines are going to build confidence and develop the discipline that's going to serve you for when you set bigger ones, like hitting a 900-pound total this year or dropping to 15% body fat by summer. those aren't the goals you want to start with. Depending on where you are, start small. Develop the habits, develop the discipline. That discipline will serve you when you get to the bigger goals. Once you learn that you can keep the small appointments, then you start to trust yourself that you're going to keep the big ones. Think of how much different it feels from when somebody says, I'm going to get in shape one of these days, compared to by October 1st, I'm going to be down 10 pounds. When you do that, your training starts to look different. Your grocery trips start to look different. Those daily walks become non-negotiable, all because that date on the calendar is looming. So if a client comes to me and says, I want to put 50 pounds onto my squat, and if I say, when? And he says, sometime, I just want to do it. I just want to put 50 pounds on. I'll be like, no, sometime equals no time. But if he says, I want to do it by the end of the year, perfect. Now we can develop a plan and work backwards. We can divide the year into quarters and mark where we are along the way, mark progress, see how far we have come towards that end goal by the end of the year. And this is how dreams turn into strategy through the discipline of deadlines. So one of the best examples of the power of a deadline is a student and a graduation date. A lot of us probably have kids that are university age or have been through university recently, and they sign up for their classes and they're given a date by the end of it that they're going to graduate. They don't say, I'll get my diploma someday. They're given a date when they're going to graduate. And this date keeps them moving through the semesters, studying for the exams, completing the projects, doing the late night study sessions, because that graduation date is circled on the calendar. Without that date set, school would just drag on forever. So the same thing goes for your training. Without that deadline set to your goals, whatever they may be, you're just going to be a student who never graduates. So as I've mentioned a couple times, the best parallel to that graduation date for you and your training goal is a meet, entering a meet, and having that date set that you're going to compete. Having that deadline set forces you to confront reality, and it exposes whether or not you are serious or just pretending. Pretending feels safe, but it produces nothing. Getting serious feels risky, but it produces change. Once you have a training goal, a date set, be it a meet or just a personal goal, you can measure change and see progress. And visual, measurable progress will feed your spirit and your motivation like nothing else does. So you may not be at your goal yet, but you're moving towards it. And if you're closer today than you were yesterday, the deadline is doing its job. Now, a warning here. Deadlines do require discipline, but they also require flexibility. You don't move the goal just because you got lazy, but you adjust the timeline when life truly interrupted your progress. So I don't want you to be so rigid that if you miss your goal by a month, you just quit. Remember, the date is set. It's there to pull you forward, not punish you. If you stumble, simply reset and keep moving. If you've ever heard of the concept of time slowing down, when you set deadlines, time slows down in a good way because the days no longer slip by, because they are measured and counted and used for the most effective use of your time. If you're worried about failing, I can assure you that failing is not missing a deadline. Failure is not having one in the first place. You can miss a deadline and still win because you're moving. You can reset and keep pushing, but you can't reset what you never set in the first place. So whatever your goal is, stop being casual about it. Decide, commit, set a deadline, and let it push you into action. We all perform better when we know the target and the time. Deadlines give order to chaos and structure to vision. They don't limit you. They expand you. They challenge you to see what you're truly capable of. They turn potential into performance. They turn vague wishes into tangible results. So the moment you set that deadline, the dream starts to pull you. So those dreams that you have, they only become real and are only accomplished when they are tied to time. So let me know if you have any questions about setting goals for your own training. If I can help, there's a link down below to book a free call with me. We can get on a call together and set a game plan and put our heads together and set some goals for you, for your training, to help push you forward. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.